Good afternoon, and welcome to everyone. My name is Terrence Griffin. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement at Rutgers University, Newark. Thank you all for being with us today. This webinar is part of a Rutgers University Alumni Association virtual event series, which offers Rutgers alumni and friends the opportunity to stay connected and hear from faculty members across the university. Today, we're honored to have with us Professor Alexander Gates, a distinguished service professor and former chancellor at Rutgers University, Newark. Dr. Gates has been with Rutgers University for 32 years and has served as chair of the Earth and Environmental Sciences for 19 of those 32 years. Gates has worked as an exploration geologist for Chevron USA and a senior scientist for the New York Geological Survey. He has extensive experience in geoscience education and STEM education, especially for students from minority groups who are traditionally underrepresented in STEM. He is the originator, executive director, and PI of the award-winning Garden State Lewis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation. This is a $5 million multi-school program to increase the number of underrepresented minorities studying science, technology, engineering, and math at New Jersey colleges. He has received many professional awards, including White House recognition for this program. Some information about today's event. Please note that all attendees have been placed on mute for the duration of this discussion. If you have questions, please send them directly to either me or all panelists via the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. Following the discussion, I'll read the questions aloud for Dr. Gates, and we'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible. It is now my privilege to turn it over to Professor Gates.
Okay, thank you, Terrence, and thanks all of you for coming in and attending today. I wish we could be meeting in person, but I guess this is the way things are going this year. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the programs I'm running. I guess I started, I've always kind of been interested in outreach, and I started these bigger programs probably in 2006. So I've been doing this for about 14 years. And I started out working in earth and environmental sciences, which is my area of expertise, and moved it on to all of STEM. And I especially focus on students who are from inner city areas in northern New Jersey and central New Jersey, and especially those in Newark. As working through this, it's amazing what kind of obstacles, overwhelming obstacles that a lot of these kids have to go through to succeed. So a lot of these programs are designed to just help them do that, so that they can actually overcome these tremendous obstacles and succeed in STEM. And the reason for STEM is that STEM pays, as far as payment and availability of jobs and security of jobs. STEM usually is top of the list for these areas, and so that's why we're focusing on helping them in STEM. Okay, so I'm going to go through. I'm going to have Terrence turn the slide for me. So next slide, please. Okay, so why should we care? All right, so, and we're having obviously a lot of issues these days when it comes to inner city strife, shall we say. And so one of the reasons that I think, anyway, of part of the inner city strife is that, it's economic. And so, as I said, since STEM is a good field to go into, then the reality is we should be able to have everybody about at the same level. And that is absolutely just not the case. And it's seriously a crisis in this country the way it goes. So I always like to use these graphs. These are from the American Physical Society. And you look at the one on the left is especially good because that's for African American population. And you could see it stayed relatively constant over the past 20 years, a little bit up in the recent history. And you can see that the reality is these are for each and every STEM discipline. They all should be at 14 to 15% along that dotted line. And so you can see how low they are. And, you know, mine, unfortunately, is at the bottom, which is the earth sciences. But look at some of the other ones are even horrifying that they were actually higher before. So even though we're putting all this money into this, math and statistics has dropped by almost half. Physics has dropped. Engineering has dropped. Only biology really and earth science have gone up. The rest of them really haven't done anything. So the situation is not getting better, even though the number of minority students, the population of underrepresented minorities in the United States is going up. We're not getting more going into STEM. And if you look at on the right side, a little harder to figure that one out because that's for Hispanic, Latinx populations. Because it's increasing so fast in the population, everything looks like it's going up. But the reality is it's not. It's still the same percentage. We still should have all those colored lines should be up at the dashed line, and clearly they're way below it. And even though they're improving, it's hard to say whether they're improving based just on population growth or not. But clearly we have a problem, and that's a crisis. If we want to keep getting more people going into this, we're going to have to do a better job. Next. Okay, so what we did was one of the ones I'm going to report on today. And as I said, I've been involved in a bunch of projects. This one is the Garden State Lcent. So I started this in 2009. Well, Rutgers University Newark is the lead on this. All the schools you can see in there are part or have been part. So a couple of them have opted to come out. We only have one community college, that's Essex County College, because it's so close to Rutgers Newark. But you can see all these other schools are participating in it. Now, the way they look at this is, what was your baseline of underrepresented minority graduates in STEM? So amongst the schools that we're going to be looking at that persisted, the baseline was 488 graduates in 2009. Okay, and so we'll use that as our baseline. Next. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this Lewis-Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation. And this is a big National Science Foundation initiative, a very successful and big one. So the mission of this is to increase retention, graduation, success of underrepresented minority students in STEM. Basically the same thing we're doing now. It began in 1991, so it's actually coming up to its 30th year. There's currently 59 alliances, and these are alliances of multiple universities, just like the Garden State Lcent, across the United States, all across, even in Hawaii and Alaska. There's more than 220,000 Lcent scholars per year participate in this. That's underrepresented minority students majoring in STEM. In the former, as it started out, it used to be a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And what they wanted you to do was to double your number of graduates within 5 years. So you had to come up with programming to do that. They also have what's called the Bridges to the Doctorate. That was a newer program to where you could have graduate students go in and earn doctoral degrees that were former Lcent students. And the Bridges to the Baccalaureate, which started even more recently to try to help community college students move up to the next level. Next. Okay, so the Garden State Lcent, we used a lot of the, as everybody does, use some of the what they call the the best practices. That's what they call these. So learning community is a big one. You have to get all the students together so that they can support each other. They feel like they're part of a group. It encourages them to go on. That's one of the ones that all of them have learning communities. And we established one. Research experiences, always try to get those hands-on experience, being mentored by a faculty member, and so that they can get some real practical experience, helps them get jobs or go on to graduate school. And that's one of the things we were the top as far as research experience, because we really push that. We have an annual conference. Most places do. Ours, we make a big deal out of it. They have tutoring for, at-risk students, peer team learning, same sort of thing, except it's in groups. And then we always were the experimental ones. So a lot of people just go with the standard stuff, but we don't. We try something new all the time. I'm going to show you a couple of our what we try new all the time. So one of them we did early on was this, augmented learning stuff, the ALEX enrichment, where we developed a system using an online system to help students in math, because math was always a tough one. And the way we started, we had about a group of about 30 students who had a cumulative GPA of 1.8 coming into this. And it was 6 weeks over the summer. They had 3 to 4 hours a week. That was it. And the same group got a 3.45 GPA after. So it was phenomenally, successful, and we still use it. Academic Success Boot Camp. These are for people who are heading down they're crashing, and we try to save them and get them all up. And we did another one where everybody had about a 2.0 GPA. They were all on academic probation. And we did a group of about 16 and used this, and they all graduated in 4 years, and their GPAs were all nice and high. So it worked beautifully. So those are kind of some of the things, but I'm going to show you some new ones. So next. Okay, just some background on to show you what we had. So we have a huge conference every year, and you can see in the upper left-hand side there that Senator Booker came and talked at it once. We had usually some big name person who comes and talks. The woman next to him was the director from the National Science Foundation. We have, you look on the upper right, we have all of those research experiences. The students present as posters. So there's a big poster session. That's the biggest part of ours. We have sometimes we have over 200 posters in this session of all the people that do research. And we hold it down in Rutgers, New Brunswick. That's the bottom right, where you can see all of that. We have 500 to 600 attendees, mostly students. So it's a really big deal, and it drives the whole system for the whole year. We have a good one. I'm a little afraid this year because we can't have one in person, but this usually everybody gets so psyched up from these things that it drives the whole system for the rest of the year. Next. Okay, so what do we get from all this? Well, here's what we've done so far. So we went from 488, you can see that growth curve, and in fact, in 2019, we're up to 1446, so we have almost tripled the number of underrepresented minority students earning STEM degrees over the time period that we were doing this. So you can see this has really been successful. Things have really done well. So we owe this to some of the things that we've done. I'm going to show you some of the other stuff that helped towards this great success and some of the other things that have come from it. Next. Okay, so here's kind of some of the results. So at Rutgers Newark, for example, we increased the number of URM STEM graduates by 156% in 3 years, 2.5 times what we started out at 39, we were at 100 in 3 years. That's how fast it increased. The Garden State Lcent on a whole, because what we would do is we would test all of these experiments. We were always the guinea pigs at Rutgers Newark. And then whatever worked, we tried all kinds of things. We did the Thomas Edison method. You try 100 things and hope some of them work. And anything that worked, we would pass on to the rest of the Lcent. So you can see the Garden State Lcent doubled its number, 100% increase in 4 years. And we were only the second Lcent to ever have done it in less than 5 years in now the 30-year history, as was a couple of years ago, in the 30-year history of the program, we were the only one other program down in Florida did that. But we did it. We sponsored the most research experience. That's what I said. We make sure everybody gets their hands on and gets some research experience. We have 600 people at our annual conferences. We renewed for phase 3. We've gone in through. We started out phase 1 for 5 years. We went to phase 2 for 5 years. We're now at phase 3. So we're in our third. We're already up into our 11th year with the Garden State LSAM. For a while, we're running 3,200 men. We're a little below that now. And you can see we're up to over 1,400 now in 2019. It is an old slide. Next. Okay, one of the things we did was we used to do experiments with Essex County College students. So I went on, they weren't anything bad. But, you know, we did these experiments where we try new things to see if we couldn't help them achieve better and be able to then transfer into the Garden State LSAM. So what I did was we knew what our feeder schools were. So I invited a bunch of them to become associate members of the Garden State LSAM. And these were Passaic County College and Hudson County College, and Bergen, Union. What else am I missing? Passaic? They say Passaic? Anyway, so there's 5 of them to start off with. And I think at this, Middlesex. And Middlesex dropped out. We picked up Morris County College of Morris now. So we've kind of worked around with a bunch of the different ones. And so once I got them in, then there was a call for these new bridges to the baccalaureate at the time. So I helped them write a proposal, and they got a grant called a Bridges to the Baccalaureate grant. So they became the Northern New Jersey Bridges to the Baccalaureate. It's run out of Passaic County College. You can see Tom Van Aken is the director of it. Next. Okay, so what we did was I put this together, and the term I used, which they liked, was they were synergistically interacting consortia. A mouthful, but you know, those NSF types like things like that. So anyway, that was the term I used. And so we put this together that we would have these 5 high impact activities from the Garden State LSAM that would be passed down, that we could kind of interact with each other. And one of them was undergraduate research. So they would recruit students from these community colleges, and we would place them in 4-year schools to do research over the summers. So here we could start getting them connected to the idea of going to a 4-year school. We had peer-led team learning or supplemental instruction. Either one was fine to help the students who were having trouble through the individual classes. They did math bridge programs, so that's the ALEX they put in it, peer mentoring, and then the career and transfer seminars to try to encourage them to graduate and transfer. Next. Okay, so here, for example, was a transfer day. We used to hold these separate and now kind of combined with other things. But this one was at Rutgers Newark, at about 200 students. We presented the information in an innovative way, and had them talk to schools and students and everybody else to try to get them to transfer. And so this is what we used to hold. We still hold them. They're just held a little bit different than this. But this is one of the things we did as one of those interacting, the last column on the list. Next. Okay, one of the other things we tried here was something that we, again, as I said, always got to be trying something new. So one of the new things that we did was I put together what I call cross-campus peer mentoring. So there's peer mentoring on the whole, that's been done before on one campus, but I wanted to take people who had graduated from a community college, had transferred to a 4-year school and did it successfully, and then they could go back and mentor students at a community college from the same community college if you could work it out right, and then talk to them and help them get through the process. Because even though all these community colleges think they do a great job, and they do a good job of telling the students how to transfer to the next step, a lot of them don't really understand what's going on. So this, we could kind of help them through the hard spots. So if you look at the upper left-hand set of graphs, we set up what we call confidence. Do you know what major you're going to go into? Do you know what school you're going to go to? And do you know how to do it? How do you transfer? And so we asked, those were what set up confidence. And you can see before we started this thing, a lot of people are somewhat confident. There's some decently confident and very confident. It's all kind of a mix. After the program, we ran 120 students through this in 2 cohorts. That's the lower right hand is the result. So you can see we are way up there. Almost everybody was supremely confident, very confident that they could transfer. And then some were a little bit less, but boy, has that shifted between those 2 graphs, right? Next. So how did that work out? Okay, so this shows you that red line across the bottom. At the time, that was the national average. Even though 78% of students that go to community college think they're going to go on and get a bachelor's degree, the reality at that point was that it was 29%. And now it's up to 33%. But nonetheless, that's it. That's how many people transfer. So you think everybody transfers from community college, but it really is they don't. So in the bridges to the baccalaureate, because of what we do with that, we get a 51% transfer rate. So you can see it's much higher for our bridges to the baccalaureate people in general. However, the people that did the cross-campus peer mentoring, the spring of 2016 group, 98% of them transferred, and in the summer, 95%. So we almost had 100%, and maybe by now they could be even higher. We haven't checked on the students since, so they might have actually come up even higher than that. But really, that cross-campus peer mentoring worked like a charm. Next. Okay, and how did the B2B work? Okay, so graduation rates, we want to increase the graduation rate. Before is the red, green is the after, so that's graduation on the left. On the right-hand side was transfer. So you can see we basically doubled everything because of those. Okay, so it worked very nicely. Next. Okay, so where did they all go? Yeah, if the school was very, proactive, then they went and transferred there. So you can see us being the top, of course, since we're the lead. We took great advantage of this, and so you can see starting from 2014 up to 2016, we went up. Our transfers from the northern New Jersey bridges of baccalaureate went up about 170%. Okay, so we picked up a lot. Then it kind of flattened off. Some of the other schools that really were involved in it were like Kane did a decent job, and Montclair did some work compared to that bottom curve is the average. So for the state, those are from IPED's data. So anything higher than that bottom curve means they're doing a good job. So obviously we took the best advantage of it, of course, but other people did as well. Next. Okay, so what we did was, as you can see, it's kind of flattened off. And our numbers actually flattened off. So I said, what are we going to do to boost this up again? So what I did was we put together a social media experiment that I'm going to show you about now, that we worked with some people from Facebook. And so we had some professionals help us put together videos. And so we spotlighted some student success stories in 3 videos, and 2 of them are individuals and 1 of them is a multiple. And so what I'm going to do now is I am going to show you the 3 videos in a row. You'll see that number 1 will be Flomo, and number 2 is Luciani, and then number 3 is going to be the compilation. And then I'll tell you about what they did. But we ran them for 16 days. So they or was it 12 days? No, I think it was 16 days total. And so it was just a few days apiece for each one of them. And in the spring of 2017, on March, April, and you'll take a look at these. So these are the videos we showed. We had them shared on Facebook by the people who they were about and anyone else. And so we'll see what the results are. So I'm going to let Terrence now is going to show those videos. So
I was kicked out of high school in my junior year. I didn't know what was out there for me. I just saw what was going on in the neighborhood, and I just thought that naturally that's what we do. We just sort of join the fellas outside on the corners. After high school, like I said, I did a bunch of dumb things. I ended up going to jail. I think it was just mainly the peer support. It got me into the habit of studying and just being able to speak to somebody who completely understands what you're going through was a great attribute. My Bridges to Doctor scholarship was at California State University, Los Angeles. They gave me $30,000 a year, a stipend. They paid for my tuition as well. College was my getaway, and it was a tough getaway. It built me as a person.
When I came to America, my dad emphasized that you're coming to America to get an education. You're here to be someone. We do maintenance, we clean laboratories. You should be the one working in the laboratory. In the Dominican Republic, let's say I was a rebel child. I used to climb out the windows and leave school. I didn't know what you do in the environmental science field. And then I saw one of the girls there. And I was like, hey, what are you doing? She was like, oh, I'm in Lcent. I'm doing research. And I'm like, hey, I want to do that too. So the next semester, I was working with her. Once you're in Lcent, you just kind of drag people with you. Research, internships, tutoring services. It feels like a great sense of empowerment.
You really had to be cautious when walking to school because there were gangs everywhere. Before my senior year in high school, I got hit by a truck and I was paralyzed for 6 months.
Actually, I went to Seton University for 2 years, but had to withdraw due to mental health and financial issues.
I wasn't prepared for the transition from high school to college.
I didn't see myself going to college at all.
My first GPA was really bad. I think they provide this environment where you can figure out what you want to do.
A network of professionals and faculty who are there to support you.
Opportunities to expand beyond my academics.
Now I'm about to graduate soon and try to make a difference.
Well, I apologize for the quality through this. You can see these are really high-end professional, videos, and you can see them. They're all still up on Facebook, or if you want to email me, I can get you the connection to those if you're interested. So all those people are doing phenomenally well. Either they have jobs, all of them have graduated. They either have jobs or getting PhDs or in some kind of graduate program. So all of them are very successful after this, after the stuff. Now, we tried a couple of things. We tried all kinds of different ways of sharing. We tried on Instagram. We tried just sharing. And one of the things is that when this program started, there was another guy who started it with me but left after the first year, and his name was Cory Booker. So it's Cory Booker's brother. So I have a kind of a connection. That's how I get Cory to come and talk and things like that. So we asked Cory to get Cory Booker to share it. So you can see on here he shared the link, for these videos up on his own just one of the ones, the last one on his page. And so we wanted to see all the ways that this would work better. Next. Okay, so here is our daily reach. So this was phenomenal. We didn't realize we were going to do so well. So you can see what we did was we let the first little blip is Flomo. So we put that out from, the 21st or whatever, the 321 for 4 days. And we started with Luciani was the next one. And she didn't, she put hers out, but it wasn't global for a while. So the first little hump is not, and it was fully shared. And then the next little bump, which is very low, is Instagram purely paid. Everything else was what they call organic. So people would share across their own platforms without having to be paid for it. And then the third one wasn't doing as well with the composite one until Cory Booker shared it, and you could see that last day where it shoots way up over there on the right. That's because Cory Booker shared it. And so you can see what we actually had was this reach, which is how many pages it goes across over these, 3 or 4, I guess 4 different tests. It went across 160,000 people's accounts in 16 days. So we were average about 10,000 a day that who got to see, at least went across their screen. Okay, and that was done. We didn't pay any money for it. This was done just basically, putting it out on, having it be shared by the students and things. Okay, next slide. And so this is how many people watched it. So this for more than 5 seconds. So we actually had 48,000 views over those 16 days. So we had a huge amounts of views, and you can see the different times that people were watching it, and which is phenomenal. And I don't know if I have the slide up there, but a huge amount of people watched it. It was like, averaging 25 seconds or 30 seconds. Supposedly like 2% of posts get more than 3 seconds. So we did great on as far as the numbers go. And you can see all of the numbers of how many people viewed it on the daily views on here. But we saw a lot of people viewing it. So it really went well in this little tiny thing, 16 days. Next. Okay, and did we hit the target audience? That's the other thing. I mean, after all, who's viewing it? When we're trying to go after a certain group, we want underrepresented minority students from New Jersey who are, in a certain age bracket. So here is from FLOMOS, and you can see on the left-hand side there, it tells you what your audience. We had 1,900 minutes of viewing in those 4 days, 1,900 minutes. And so you can see by far, almost 50% of all the viewers were male between 18 and 24, exactly what we wanted to hit. Well, we could have been female, but, we hit exact target audience. If you look at where they came from, the middle one shows you that 88% were from New Jersey. So we actually hit the target. We hit all, people in the right age group and from New Jersey. Next. This was Luciani's. I don't know why, but, when we put the woman up there, then we got, more females liked it. But notice where the grouping is all the way on the left-hand side. You can see we had 1,600 minutes of viewing, which is phenomenal. Most of the people were female between 18 and 24, exactly what we wanted to hit. Over 90% in the middle category were from New Jersey. And, all the stuff on the right is how they liked it. So everything was positive all the way across. We had nothing but positive responses. Next. Now, this one was when Cory Booker shared it, and we got mostly female, but we still got mostly in the 18 to 24 age bracket, but we got it kind of spread out because he's got a bigger fan base. And also we had less people just in New Jersey, as you can see in the middle column, and 2,300 minutes of viewing time. Amazing. Okay, next. Okay, so here's the number of seconds for each one of them. So as I said, usually if you get more than 2 seconds, it's amazing. We got 25 seconds for Flomo, 28 for Luciani, and 24 seconds. This is amazing. Everybody watched it, half the video, on average, just about half the video, which is, phenomenal. Next. Okay, so what does this mean? All right, so we, a lot of people watched it. What did it do? Okay, so we had to kind of wait for a few years to see what the results of this would be. And so we were just kind of blown away because we just figured this out a couple of months ago. And we're writing up a paper now on it because it's too good to let lie. But you can see, for example, this is the New Jersey Community College's new STEM transfer enrollments. So you can see on the bottom line is non-URM. So these are white and Asian Americans, okay? And that's, so you can see it's pretty much flat, or even going down a little. from 2017. But if you go to the next one up, which is underrepresented minorities, that's the middle one with the dashed lines, you can see that we ran it in 2017, and look what happened in 2018. We get this huge burst of new applicants coming to Rutgers Newark, and then you could tell it had to be that because the next year dropped right down to where it should have been in the first place, because then it would have matched the non-URM. And we had so many that you could see the overall enrollment, which is the top curve, actually was up, all because of the increase in underrepresented minority students transferring from community colleges. So we were blown away by this, that it had that big an effect. Next. Now, we broke this out a little to even be, this is by all STEM. So this isn't just from community colleges because, you know, it went around to more than just that. It went to all kinds of places. So here you can see, again, over the top from 2017, if for the white is actually on a downhill trend, that's the dotted lines. The dash with the double dots is Asian, went up a little in 2017, but not much. And you can see then African Americans, both one, you know, just that 1 year in 2018, they shot up and went right back down again. So it was just the 1 year, and the same for Hispanic. You know, went way up on the 1 year and then came back down. So clearly it was just that one thing that happened in 2017 that we wound up getting this big burst, you know, and that was basically, we looked around, nothing else was done. So it was this, it was the videos. Next. And what is this in the overall enrollment? Because after all, it's not just transfer students. It's students come, you know, because we were in those other graphs, we didn't take into account freshmen so other people could have come in. So this is kind of impressive. It happened. So if you look at the dark blue curve on the top, that is for non-URM STEM. So that is white and Asian Americans. And the light blue on the bottom, starting from the left on the bottom, is underrepresented minorities. So you can see they were kind of going along at the less than the non-URM. And then all of a sudden, when we did 2017, we ran it. Since then, that X, because we have an X, it means that Rutgers Newark went from having mostly not underrepresented minority students in STEM to by far having more underrepresented minority students in STEM than non-URM. So imagine that. We actually flipped the curve for the whole college, and notice that it continued to go up. So even though we got that first boost up to 2018 was probably because of people right off of the, transferring and things like that, because it also affected, you know, incoming students, it continued to go up. So even in 2019, we're way up. So obviously we're going to try to do this again, but what an outcome. So anyway, you're seeing this for the first time. Never showed this to anybody before. We're going to publish it as soon as we can get together and write it. Anyway, pretty impressive stuff. Next. Okay, so the other thing was, how much money does this thing bring in? There's a lot of money that goes into this. And so you can see we've been very successful with leveraging this for other grants. All right, so here's the amount of money. The NSF grant at the top, you can see, was $5 million for the first 5 years, $3.5 million for the next 5 years, and we're now at our third 5 years at $4 million. So it's about $800,000 a year. That's what goes directly. I just started a Bridges to the Doctorate program at Rutgers Newark this year. We have all kinds of others. The Bridges to the Baccalaureate is the next one. We consider that as part of this whole group. And you can see there's a bunch of other grants that do specific things. Now this looks like, and so we brought in about $28 million in federal money, you know, in affiliations by doing this. And you can see it's a lot, and it sounds like a huge amount, but if you think about, we've got 8 schools and how many students, I mean, we've got over 200 students at Rutgers Newark alone, 3,200, you divide up that money into, and it gets real fine. So reality is our 200 students at Rutgers Newark, we have $39,000 a year to run everything. And then most of that is paying them to do research. So even though it looks like a huge amount, and we're doing great, I'm not complaining, but you can there's never enough money, right? You can never have too much money or be too thin. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Gates. Do appreciate you. Thanks. I'll start out with some questions here that were sent in through registration, and then we'll allow the Q&A to populate other questions. First one is a more general question, is how do we help stimulate interest in STEM for minority students?
Well, I mean, that has to start at the lower levels, really. I mean, by the time we get them to college, a lot of times they've already made the decision. We've converted plenty of people at the college level to reconsider and go into STEM, especially because Lcent helps them, even if they thought they weren't any good at STEM. That Lcent will help them to succeed. So we'll try. We go after everybody. We go after, we go to EOF programs and things like that, and try to convince people that we can help them through. Just give it a try. But otherwise, it's got to come from down, in these high school programs or even before, to try to get the kids to start to think about be going into STEM is a possibility for them, especially exposure. Because if you think about it, a lot of kids say if they grow up in Newark, what professionals in STEM might they come across, as they're going along in life? It might be a doctor or a dentist or something like that. And maybe that's all they think that's out there for them. Whereas to educate them on all the possibilities that they can go into, that's the big thing, is the education of it.
So do you have any stats on how many graduates are working in the field and how many go on to graduate programs?
We probably have stats to go on to graduate programs, and certainly it's gone up. The problem is at $39,000 a year, longitudinal studies are expensive and time consuming. Since we graduate, how many a year to go and track them all down? We've tracked down a bunch of them. A lot of them are doing like those people I showed in the video. I mean, several of them are getting PhDs, others masters. All of them are working. It's done very well, but I don't have any. I have that the graduates going into graduate school is way up, but I can't tell you about everything else.
Great. So in all of your experiences and everything that you mentioned today, what would you say was your biggest struggle and your greatest lesson?
Well, the biggest struggle always is to convince. I mean, the problem is a lot of underrepresented minority students that come in don't think they belong in STEM. And so the biggest struggle is to convince them that they are welcome in STEM, that they can succeed in STEM, and that they belong in STEM. And to get them really part of the system and get them to change, because otherwise they walk in with one foot in the door and one foot out, just in case it doesn't work out, they're ready to take off. And to convince them that we're going to help them through, and even if they have some setbacks, we'll be there for them, and they should stick with it because they'll do well. That's a big thing to get them to understand, and the transition into a job. Because school's one thing and a job is another. So those two things are our biggest challenges for sure. What was the second one? I can't remember.
Greatest lesson.
Yeah, I mean, it probably is the same thing. The greatest lesson we kind of pushing for is how do you get those students to continue with this. And so the lesson is, that you have to put that right up front. That you can't just assume. It's too easy to make assumptions on this. That you have to just not assume and always, make things foolproof.
So from all of the programs that you discussed today, which would you say are the most successful?
Well, I mean, that's a hard one to say. I mean, we've done really well with, I had another one that was called Opportunities for Enhancing Diversity in the Geosciences that I ran. I started that the year before I started Lcent. And that went, phenomenally well. We got all kinds of things out of it, but Lcent certainly has gotten the most recognition. So we've won, we had the White House Award. We got an award from the State House, from the governor. We've had all kinds of accolades for this and money. So I've got to say Lcent was the biggest. So.
Do most of your students graduate in 4 years?
Yes, we have. We're the average for Rutgers Newark is 5 something, but we graduate them fast. We're very cognizant to get them out quickly. The longer you keep people in undergraduate, the better the chances is that they could drop out. Financial situations, personal situations come up, they may not finish. So we try to get them out quickly.
Okay. I have a question from a participant here who is teaching in the Department of Speech and Hearing Sciences in the Bronx. Many of our students are poorly prepared in math and sciences. How would you recommend this person help them so that they can succeed in all areas, but mainly in the STEM areas?
Right. I mean, a lot of the setback in STEM is math. So because obviously you have to take a lot, math is behind a lot of it. I mean, there are some things that are classifications that don't have it, but the math is big. So as I said, what we did was we used this ALEX program and we tested out a bunch of them. And if you modify it, it has the capacity to oversee. You can't just hand these, a lot of people think you can just hand out this stuff out and the kids will learn it. I mean, you might as well just give them a book then, and not going to do it. So with this, we have oversight on these programs. So we modify them by putting an oversight system in that we can track how, and so when they hit problems, then we can help them get through it. But the ALEX is big is because it makes the assumption that math is kind of builds on itself. So if you're in calculus and somebody says we add these 2 fractions and you say, oh my God, I don't know how do you add fractions, that's it. You're lost for the rest of the lecture. So what this does is it gives you this test and it figures out your weak spots, and then it develops a personalized, it's like having a personal trainer, personalized set of exercises to strengthen you up on the areas that you're weak in. And so that we found really has done marvelous stuff as long as you have oversight, because the kids just aren't going to do it on their own. You have to kind of make sure they're continuing with it. So that's the biggest thing. And then obviously this community, they have to feel, the students have to feel like they are part of a group. They can't feel like they're the only ones in it, or they're going to go in so worried that, that they're going to be, that they're going to, that they really don't belong. They have that, all these terms now for, where you feel like you're a fraud in science and things like that, and so they have to continue to think that they're positive, that they're going to be able to be successful. Those are the 2 things that I recommend the most.
Okay. Kind of in that same vein, what are some best practices that you think should be done for a student, a parent, an institution to ensure success for a first year URM?
Great question. As I said, one of the biggest problems that we find is that, because especially in up in Newark, where most of the kids are they're first time college students in their families. And so the parents don't know all of the things that are available. So the problem is the kids are a lot of times that we find are pushed into being medical doctors or nurses maybe, and or they pushed into things that they're really not ready for. And certainly, medical school is hard to get into and it costs a lot of money, and it's, and you may not like cutting people open. So, so there's or getting sick, and so the problem is to get it out there to the parents of all the different opportunities that there and how great the opportunities are, so that they get parental support. We once did a survey of one of these big classes, as a hand survey, and we found that like 85% of the kids Why did they pick their major? Because their parents wanted them to. And so, so the parents have to be on board to support the students when they find something that they're really excited about, to help them to pursue that in college, in school and in college. So, I mean, that is one of the biggest things is exposure to these different fields, the understanding of what it involves and how far you can go. How much what kind of a great career can I have out of this? Those are the things that really have to be done, that's the biggest thing. So,
great. So, do you think then? And you might have touched on this a little bit in your response to this question, maybe one before, but do you think that this subject will become moot if there were proper resources offered to minority students in the K through 12 level?
I mean, well, I don't think it's just resources. So if you're asking me that, I'd say no. I'd say, I mean, the biggest thing is they have to feel like they're welcome into the field, and I'm all constantly having the talks with people about, because a lot of people don't understand it. It's that you walk in, and if you're a white person, you go into a field that's all white, and you walk in and you kind of say, all right, well, everybody looks like me. Everyone's like me. They have the same background as me. Of course, I could see myself belonging here. But when you walk into a company with an interview and you're the only one who's with your background, the first thing you got to say is, do I belong here? What the heck? And so, that is the biggest problem. We have to have it. I mean, until we can turn it around that these underrepresented minority students, you can see those horrible numbers on the graphs in the beginning. They have to walk into those places and say, okay, there's other people, I don't have to be a groundbreaker. I don't have to be a trailblazer if I want to go into this field. There's other people here that are, that are the same, have the same background as I do, or at least the person hiring me says, wow, we really value your contribution here. We're not just hiring you as a token. We value your input. And that's a big thing. People have to feel valued. That's what I think, and welcome, regard that they don't have to be Superman either to get in. That's the biggest thing to get more underrepresented minorities in STEM.
Great. So last question here is, I guess, timely in the sense of the changes, given COVID and all of that, where everything is more remote, everything is virtual. So have your services been impacted at all with virtual learning, and what's been that impact, if so?
Oh, God. I'm not for an answer. Yes, they've been impacted badly. I mean, one of the big things we want is, it's one thing to read about research or read about doing something, and it's a whole nother thing to actually do it yourself. And so our research program, our faculty have been great. They've tried to do things online, but it just isn't the same. If you've put your hands on and run this piece of equipment, or done these sampling or gone out in the field, it's a whole lot different than reading about it. And so we've tried to do the best we can. I am begging in fact, I have something, a little behind the scenes thing going on, trying to get, in-person research going for Lcent students now. We'll see, fingers crossed that it works, because I feel that strongly, plus having the mentoring of the faculty member, encouraging the student and having feedback. You can't do that online. So have we been impacted by this? Is it negative impacting? Absolutely.
Okay. Last question.
Sure.
I may have lied there.
It's okay.
Is there a bridge program that takes these STEM students and that somehow welcomes them into an MBA program?
NSF doesn't support professional degrees. So it's not through National Science Foundation. Now, for a while, I did have a grant with a group of faculty from New Brunswick, actually, and Camden, when they developed what is called an MBS at Rutgers. So those are professional science master's degree, PSMs. And so we had a grant a few years back where we had Lcent students in particular were recruited and could get this MBS. So an MBS is a hybrid degree between an MS in a science and an MBA. And so they could get that, which is about as close as you're going to get to NSF paying for a professional degree.
Noted. All right. Well, those are all of the questions.
Great.
Dr. Gates, thanks so much for sharing your time, your expertise, and responding to those questions. We do appreciate it. To all those who have attended today, thank you for joining us virtually. We do appreciate it. We hope to see you at some future events that are presented by the RUAA. And enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, everyone.